Okay, we will get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Dan. I'm from the Land App, and I'm joined by Nick McDonald, who's from Cowdray Estate. Today, we're going to be talking for about an hour, or maybe a little bit under, about how you can use the Land App with its current functionality to map your estate. That includes dealing with tenancies and other projects you may be running, such as countryside stewardship and UK habitat baselining. Before I hand over to Nick, I just want to do a bit of housekeeping. There is the Q&A function, as I just mentioned, on the bottom of your screen. So any questions, whether it's about Nick's experience, about use cases of the Land App or anything else, please do feel free to ask them. And there will be a section at the end of the discussion to answer those Q&As. What also will happen is once you leave the webinar, either at the end or if you have to nip off halfway through, not a problem, you will be met by a quick survey. And the main question of the survey is, would you be interested in learning a bit more and having a one-to-one session with one of those Land App advisors? So what we've done is we've dedicated an hour per estate for anyone that just wants to learn a bit more and have a more bespoke session with either myself, Tom, or Simla from the team. Apart from that, that's all from me for now. I'm going to just pass over to Nick for a bit of an introduction to himself, his estate, and how he's been using the Land App. So over to you, Nick.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, like Dan said, Nick McDonald from the estate land manager from Cowdray. We are if you don't know, 16,500 acre estate down in West Sussex. My job role sits within the property department here. So we have 5-strong property team, commercial director, residential manager, and my job fits into the sort of land and environment side of things. So I work heavily with the forestry manager, the farms manager, and I'd say about 80% of my job at the moment is sort of navigating our way, as we all are, through the changes that are happening in land management and farming. I've been here about 8 years now. And we had an old mapping system and we moved over to the Land App about 2 years ago, just before COVID. I had a quick introduction with Tim, sort of two-hour session with Tim to get us started. And then I spent quite a bit of my time looking on their YouTube channel to get myself up to speed. My job role encompasses, it's quite unique at the estate. I get to go to pretty much every corner of the estate, work with every single department. So mapping the estate and having that sort of collaborative approach that the Land App has been really useful for us. So yeah, plus a bit of a mapping geek. So it all fits quite nicely into my job role to sort of run the mapping here at Cowdray.
Great, thanks, Nick. And yeah, really keen to explore some of those avenues during today's demo. And hopefully what will enable us to do that is we've got a quick agenda that should be on your screen. And the 4 or 5 main topics of conversation, if that's okay today, Nick, is really how do you first start using the Land App? You've mentioned some of the help and guidance, which, all of that is available for free for all of you out there. But there are some, tips and tricks to importing data, especially if you've already got geospatial data as well. So a number of estates have already taken that journey in making their land digital, which is great. And the Land App's here to help if you want to onboard it onto our software. Then we're just going to spend, a bit of time looking at creating projects, so the project templates we have. And then Nick, you've just mentioned there correctly, that collaborative element of the Land App is, one of the main reasons that I think people are really excited about working on the platform. So yeah, sharing with your network, and I'm sure we can dive in a bit more about that. I know Nick as well, we've been working a bit together around analytics, so the dashboard, and if there's a bit of time, I'd give a bit of a demo of the dashboard that we've been using. But yeah, what I'm going to do is move over to the actual Land App. And Nick, I suppose the first question to you really is, getting started on the Land App, you mentioned some help and guidance videos. Do you want to just talk me through the different ways that you've been using either the boundaries section, so land registry, and any functionality that you want me to demo on the tool?
Yeah, so we, like you say, we had a mapping system already, which only a couple of people had access to. And it just wasn't quite working for us. So we had all that background data. We had all that, well, a huge amount of data actually on the other mapping system. That had been imported from another mapping system that we had previous to that as well. So we had the data. We used the import function to import everything. from the old mapping system, which is demonstrating there. So yeah, just exported it from the old mapping system, dragged it in, a couple of minutes work, and we had our boundaries, and then we brought everything else in, and slowly we've brought in all that other detail. For example, forestry has a huge amount of data on the old system, and we're bringing that in still bit by bit. And there were quite a few discrepancies. The map hadn't been updated since a few disposals, so we also used the land registry function just to double check. So we actually have two layers at the moment, which is the old mapping system, and then our land registry layer, just so we can sort of double check our boundary, as it were. So yeah, exactly as you're doing there.
Yeah.
In from land registry.
So yeah, just a note on that exact point. So yeah, the land registry data that we host gets updated whenever land registry updates their data set. So it is alive and hopefully an authoritative feed for you to double check ownership and work out what has been registered and what hasn't. And just to quickly show you, anyone on the call, that you could basically choose this pick from land registry button, and hit edit selection, and then each of those polygons are interactive that you can click on, and they turn from pink to orange, and then save boundary and finish. And actually what that will then do is that will drop those polygons as a kind of authoritative boundary based on that land registry title. So that include the title number, for example. So yeah, that really good way of getting data in originally. However, you mentioned in there a couple of ways you're importing data. Was there any blockers to importing data, like styling, etc., or was it?
There was, yeah. I mean, there was no, not really. Well, no, there wasn't, to be honest. There was a slight discrepancy about how it came over. It came out. I mean, if you're looking at it, it came over about, in real terms on the ground, about 1 meter out of line. But we actually recently used your move function to move it all. It literally grabbed the whole lot at once and moves it the 1 meter in real terms. For forestry it didn't matter, but for residential tenancy it needed to be absolutely bang on. So that was the only problem, really. A few point data didn't come in, but nothing we couldn't fix relatively quickly.
Yeah, not a problem. And actually on that projection, that's absolutely fine. And if anyone is moving things in an extra meter, you can use that move function that Nick's just mentioned. However, what might be best, if you just get in touch with the support team, it's probably just due to the projection you're using, Nick. So other softwares, we're using British National Grid, some use GPS, etc. All might be technical terms, but that's why we have these hour-long sessions with you at an individual level, just to make sure the data's loaded correctly. Did you use the import from rural payment agency?
Yes, we've done that. So both forestry and farms would have both brought their SBIs in to do that, and obviously start there. Use that as a basis to all their maps, because it brings in their boundary straight away.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I'm not going to actually type in your SBI number, just so we keep it behind. But just for everyone on the call, this is a live feed in with the RPA. So if you've got an SBI number, you can download directly 3 data sets: parcels, which are your authoritative field boundaries; land covers, which is how those field boundaries are divided, where the woodland, the scrub, and the arable is, for example; and then the hedgerow data, which is what it says in the tin, really, just the hedges data. And when you hit the import button after you've typed in your SBI number, what that will do in kind of Blue Peter fashion is it will drop those field parcels onto your map, like so. So contained within my land cover data, or this is just a small section of Cowdray. Contained within that is the information such as the ID numbers and the areas, which is the metadata contained within that field parcel. One thing, Nick, that I know we need to, have you purchased Ordnance Survey MasterMap data? Yeah,
we have. Yeah, so we've got an annual subscription with you, which includes that. Yeah.
Perfect. What I'd just quickly like to show everyone while we're on that importing data point is, well, firstly, if you've already paid for a license for MasterMap, regardless if it's with LandApp or with another party, we can actually pre-populate your map with MasterMap data. And there's 2 main ways that we do that. The first is just your backcloth, so the map you're using in the background. So at the moment, you can see I've got this satellite imagery. We can feed in the Ordnance Survey base maps. So just to toggle these 2 off for the moment. This is the MasterMap backcloth, which is just in the color, and we've got MasterMap light, which is just grayscale. Plus, there's also MasterMap leisure as well, which is the third type of Ordnance Survey data we can get in. However, until fairly recently, that's been the main way we serve MasterMap. But just to show you now, you can actually get the vector data, and when I say vector data, the Ordnance Survey parcels directly from Ordnance Survey by using our new buy data function. So someone like Nick's already paid for this. However, if you wanted to buy new master map or renew your license, you can click the buy data, choose the, oh, sorry, let me just go back a step, click buy data, choose master map topography layer. And then you can either use an existing project. So for example, we've already got this nice ownership boundary, so I want to buy the data within my ownership, or you can actually purchase a bounding box of data. So you can purchase all the data within a certain area. While you're drawing that, the price for that automatically updates. So there's a pricing logic that's already in the background. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to use my project, which is my ownership boundary, automatically updates, and I want to cut the features. And just to tell you what the difference are, if you use whole features, say you've got a river or this road, for example, that touches the boundary, you might be kept with all that road if it's a continuous feature. If you use cut, it just makes it a clean edge. So yeah, just to spend 2 seconds demonstrating that purchase process, which is buying Cowdray 001. Oh, that's not the what I thought. And then if you're say a land agent or an estate that wants to bill that to a client, you can add a job code and say whether that's billable or non-billable. And what that does is that just sends your farm boundary or your estate boundary to our database, goes and calls the data, and then it will plonk that data back on your map. Just one point of note, you do have to refresh your page for that to enact. So hopefully what that's done is, yeah, there we are. So what that's done for me is taken my boundary. If I now put a blank base map on, you can see that within that red line, I've now got the Ordnance Survey data that I can use, inspect, and zoom in on and have the labels, etc. So if I find a building, and we can come on to the use case for that in a minute. Just one final note on the master map piece, Nick, before we can continue talking about project templates, is that all of the data that you purchase is available through for download externally in the Land app. So like I said, if you buy an OS license, it doesn't have to stay with the same software. So if you do want to export that data from the Land app, you can go to your data purchases page that looks like this. Here's my Cowdray, and I can export that as a data file, either as a one for different software types or for the Land app itself, which is this Land app GeoJSON. And also you can download your license, etc. So that's all there as a note. Hi, Tim, I can see you've joined. Yeah, how are you doing? So we basically got, that's how you define your boundary. That's your Ordnance Survey master map. So Nick, what I wanted to now talk about is the real use cases for the Land app. So once you've got your map pre-populated, you've bought your OS data, and I'm just going to move that OS data to the top so it's hidden behind my ownership. Do you want to just quickly talk to me around the main use cases, which are your basic payment and your countryside stewardship, and how you found the functionality, and there's any tips and tricks for anyone out there?
Yeah, so the basic payment and countryside stewardship are probably the ones we're using most often at the moment, and it's and forestry, it's those land management sort of activities. Our farm manager obviously does all his BPS on there, does all his cropping plans on the Land app, and that nice collaborative element is that we can view that as live as he does it. We are currently working through a countryside stewardship plan as well, which has been just really, really useful. I think every option, having a link straight to it in the little box every time, so quick link to be able to see what option you've chosen is really, really useful. But I mean, it's very simple to do. And I'm sure you're about to do a demo of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think from most of our users, whether you're an estate or a land agent or wider, that our main use cases are those two project templates that you just mentioned, which is basic payment and countryside stewardship. Obviously, to do those, you need an SBI number anyway. So they're both optimized for using for the import in RPA data. So if you import your own data, just make sure you've spoken to one of us before you start doing a stewardship, just to make sure it's aligned. But if you import from the RPA, data should be clean. And just to kind of explain the structure of what Nick's just explained, is that these project templates are fixed ways of collecting the data. So if you choose the basic payment, you can only collect data using basic payment codes. And what that does is that limits the ability for people to make mistakes. Across an estate, it's quite important that data stays clean, and therefore these project templates just enable you that if you're using a BPS, the only codes that you have available are from a drop-down list. So you can see that I can type in the word barley, for example, and I can't misspell or mislabel or miscode that barley plot. So that means my entire estate is collecting BPS codes in the same way. And it might be that, Nick, you actually, out of interest, do you work with any external advisors, any land agency firms, for example?
Yeah, we do. And when we do, yeah, of course, we use the function of being able to invite people to outside of our organisation to come and view certain maps and change their permission level as well, which is really good. So initially they might just have a viewer, but then we might let them come in and do some editing. So be able to change their permission has been really useful. And yeah, like more and more people seem to be using the land app. So more advisors we speak to, it's becoming more easy.
Yeah, just to demonstrate, I mean, I'm not going to go through a BPS training. If people want to, you know, have a full lesson, there's some help and guidance in this right-hand button that you can click. And if you search for basic payment, basic, I'm sure there'll be a basic payment. Yeah, how to create a basic payment plan. There's a webinar that we've recorded at the start of the BPS season. So do have a watch of those. Plus, I think actually next week, Tom, we've got a BPS training session as well coming up.
I think I'll just jump in there, Dan, and say I watched your, I was saying to earlier, but I watched your BPS demo live, and you don't just learn about BPS systems as well. You learn how to, lots of other tricks and tips across the land app and how you use the land app. And I was saying, I think that the BPS, the BPS one was the most useful, just how to cut shapes. So yeah, well worth watching those just to upskill generally across the land app. So yeah.
Great, yeah, and I think with a tangible use case like BPS, it's easy to explain all the different functions. Yeah. But I think the great thing about what we're trying to do is that regardless what template you're using, the functionality is still the same. You know, regardless if you're using a UK HAV template or countryside stewardship, you can still select a polygon, assign the polygon, split the polygon in half, buffer the polygon, and that just those simple drawing tools, regardless if you're, you know, an ecologist or a land agent or doing a valuation plan, they're all consistent along those templates. So yeah, very much, even if the subject matter of the webinar isn't for you, the actual content might be for you in terms of the tips and tricks. Perfect. No, that's a good point, and thank you for that compliment. We'll take it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned stewardship, and I thought it'd be quite good just to dive in. There's a couple of people on the webinar that I know will be doing stewardships this year. So are you using, well, I suppose before I go on to the land app bit, what were you doing for countryside stewardships before you used the land app?
I mean, we're coming to a 10-year scheme, so it was all a long time ago, and it's all paper, all done by paper. So yeah, this is a much quicker way of doing it.
Yeah. So really just to outline and high-level demonstration of stewardship is exactly the same as the BPS. You can assign whole fields a code using the various options we've got, and they're both the revenue options. So it might be that you want to put in a GS2. You can search for that, or you can just search for the word grassland if you're trying to remember what options there are. Once you've assigned an option like GS2, as Nick said, the help and guidance does come up as a hyperlink. So GS2 guidance, if I can't remember what the eligibility is, please do double check that you are eligible and you know what's required in terms of all those prohibitive activities, etc. And that's dynamic as well. So at the moment it's GS2, just to show you, if I change that to GS7, that hyperlink updates. We've got a new guidance, so you can constantly just have that direct link into the guidance that you need. And there's the
sorry, Dan, just there on that, you've just where you've changed GS2 and you've got GS7 there. So they're two different options, but they appear the same. We, at the end of our round one of planning, we used the select all feature and slightly changed each feature so it looked different, so we could see where we had GS7 or GS2. So it was exactly done there. So just a way to show the difference.
Yeah, very good point. And just to recap on what I just did there is, if you right click on any feature, you can select everything in your project with the same feature code. So I've just selected all the GS2s, then I've gone up to the styling, and I can change the transparency. I wasn't selecting them all. Click select all first, hit change the styling, and then you can change the opacity or the border width, etc., and get RT. So that's a really good point. Just as a note though, if I did then retrospectively add another GS2, like this, at the moment it goes to the default styling. So if you do get in that case, what you will need to do is, as Nick said, is at the end of round one, select all feature types and update the styling again. So if I if I hit the orange, and you get the updated styling for the GS2s. That's the only way at the moment that it can be consistent with the styling, although it's in the work, it's in the backlog to try and make, you save a default styling, but at the moment, that's just a good trick and tip. So I think it might be quite good just to quickly dive into some of the option, not exact options, but the way you're drawing the options. I know, for example, and this, by the way, everyone watching, is a bit of a mock-up. This isn't actually what's happening on the ground, but we've got ways to draw floating options like this beetle bank I've drawn. And I know before we joined on, Nick, there was some other
so for example, in that field there, we might just look at squaring up the field to make it easier. Just you're doing 3 or 4 passes up and down the field, and then you're straight out, just making it a bit more a bit tidier, the fields, and then giving over the rest of the fields to another option. So we use the rectangle function and then the adjustment on it to go to a multiple of our working width, which is 36 meters. So for example there, we'd go to the closest we could get. I'll let you do the maths. 80, something like that.
There's multiple of 36. So you've drawn a rectangle.
Cut that out.
So you've got that 36. You can adjust the I mean, it says width, but it might be length. It might be that you can go a bit longer. And then you can move that feature wherever you want to start with. And then once you're happy with
rotate it as well. We rotated them to line up with the tram lines on the ground, which is obviously quite helpful. So
okay, so you're rotating with that edge, making sure it's tidy. It's a multiple of 36. And then you just hit the subtract button.
Cut that out.
And then you hit subtract. And then what you've done is you've hole punched, so to speak, that area outside of your cropping area. So you've got this nice rectangular field, which is 5 hectares.
And that might go to
6 hectare plot for a stewardship option. It might be multiple, but let's just say, for argument's sake, you put it all into winter bird food. Probably not what you're going to do, but you've got that flexibility to then. So I like that, and that's just one of the ways that you can draw these options quite quickly.
Another thing we did was the supplementary options. So for GS2, haymaking supplement, for example, we would copy that shape or duplicate that shape, and then the duplicated shape we would assign to whatever the supplementary option might be. So, and then that obviously shows up on the export export table.
So just to demonstrate that, at the moment, the map is completely 2-dimensional. There's nowhere there's overlapping. However, there's certain stewardship options that you can stack them. So GS2 and the haymaking supplement's a really good option. So at the moment, there's this field going into GS2. We've got this button that's duplicate. And if I click this, it seems fairly uneventful. Eagle eyes may have noticed it's gone a bit darker, but actually if I move that GS2, what I've done is I've just duplicated the feature exactly. So I've got 2 field parcels with exactly the same shape, exactly the same data in terms of field numbers, etc. Let me just hit back once. But that means now I can assign that GS2 on the top, the haymaking supplement, which is GS15. So now when I go to look at my report, which I can do in a minute, I've got a GS15, and underneath it, I've got a GS2, which just means that my report that I generate is going to be correct. Just one final note, and there might be some of you thinking, okay, what happens if I print it? Unfortunately, at the moment, the GS2 label is hidden behind the GS15. So what you can do is you can just add an additional label to the GS15 saying GS2, like so, and therefore you've got a stacked label for that option where there's two field parcels. So I think, Nick, in terms of countryside stewardship, I'm not going to get more bogged down into it, but it's just, from what you're saying, is it's just really streamlined and made it more efficient to communicate what the plan is. And this is a good example. We obviously did the basic, and then we haven't gone the full hog yet, but we have spoken to a consultant and we just added them in. They've had a quick look at it, and then we've removed their permission. So it's just that easy to share the map in minutes. So okay. So earlier I added Glenn as a read only. It could be that you add your consultant as an editor, and what Nick's just referring to then is once you've finished working with them, you're in control of the data, and you can just click the X button, and no longer can Glenn or whoever my consultant is can see my map. That's a good point. Okay, perfect. So that's countryside stewardship. Just kind of thinking ahead, stewardship's only got until 2027. BPS is phasing out. What are you guys doing to kind of get ready for the next step?
So we have undertaken last year in 2021. We undertook our own version of what I would call a natural capital assessment. Really just to understand what we've got, how we're treating it, what benefits it generates. And the land app featured in almost every section of that. We did it under the headings of air quality, biodiversity, water quality, but just to communicate that in a presentation format, we used the land app in almost every single function. But the biggest one we used would have been UK Hab, which is mapping the biodiversity of just the farmed area at the moment. So again, that SBI. And to do that, we did it in sort of 3 stages. So initially it was a desktop survey, which I know you could do automatically now, but we did it manually. So we did it from the cropping plans and from BPS. We then sort of what I'd call air truthed it by looking at Bing Maps and sort of just double checked that what was on the ground was what we were looking at, and then we went out and ground truthed it. But yeah, we did all our UK habitat mapping for the farmed area on the land app. We essentially took the data from that, ran it through the biodiversity metric, which gave us a habitat point score, which we can look at in the future to see giving over more area for biodiversity.
Yeah, perfect. And that you mentioned, we're automating it. However, I think what's still needed is that manual input. No matter how automated you get, no one knows your estate better than you. And therefore, we can give you the template to start creating UK habitat layer, for example, but the actual detail and the accuracy of that comes from you either looking at Bing imagery. What did you call it? Air truthing it? Quite like that.
I don't know. I think, I mean, that's just me. That's just my word. So don't take that. I think aerial truthed it by just looking exactly what you're doing there and just going, that's not quite as it should be, sort of thing. But it was pretty accurate from cropping and BPS. So
gotcha. And actually, just to show you on the call, part of the free product, if you've done a basic payment like this, so this is my basic payment, you can actually just duplicate that basic payment into a baseline habitat assessment like this, and that will automatically translate the codes from your basic payment into UK Hab. So it's picked up where there's temporary grass, where there's permanent grass, etc. And just to say thanks, that was part of the work we've been doing in an Elms trial with Flag Southwest and DEFRA and a couple of other members. So yeah, really grateful for that. But that's part of the free product. So anyone who's done a BPS in the past, if they're getting ready for a net gain assessment, for example, just duplicate your BPS into a baseline habitat assessment, and the codes should all feed through, ready for that next stage of development. We do also have a premium translation as well that is in beta stage at the moment, so it's not live in the product, but that's working with partners like Ordnance Survey and CEH and FWAG to basically make that baseline even better. So the BPS is good, but it misses some tracks. It doesn't pick up ditches. Margins might be missing, whereas we're really trying to get to a point where you can click a button and we can demonstrate and display for you that translation. Okay, so I think for UK Hab, unless there's any, do put it in the Q&A if you want to learn a bit more about UK Hab. There will be some further training sessions coming on. But Nick, I'm just thinking kind of a recap on the project templates then. What would you say are the most useful ones? And are there any other ones that we've not mentioned that just to hint at?
I mean, we use, like you say, the few that you've said, the countryside stewardship ones, those are the main project templates we use. So, and same for farms and forestry. We will use our RLE ones at some point. We'll pretty much use all of them at some point. And then, of course, we haven't quite gotten to it yet, but moving on from baseline habitat is that land management plan template or project, sorry, that will just give us that ability to imagine what we might do, future land uses, and then overlay that with the habitat, with the baseline habitat assessment, just to compare the two. But yeah, we'll probably go on to the land management. We will go on to the land management projects next.
Yeah, perfect. So just a quick recap then of where we've come from. Is what we've done is we've imported our data from RPA, or we've drag and dropped it from an external shapefile or a GeoJSON, and it's kind of preloaded. And then we've used either the automatic translation, so land cover to BPS, and kind of populated it, and then on top of that designed a stewardship. What I wanted to just quickly, and obviously the UK Hab baseline as well, what I wanted to just quickly show you is that even though you're mapping spatially, actually what you're doing is you're populating a table, you're populating a spreadsheet, and that's kind of the big export from the land app. So for example, if I wanted to look at what my BPS looked like, but in terms of numbers rather than just being a spatial representation, you can actually view your basic payment at a table level. So I've clicked the 3 dots next to BPS, hit table view, and what I do is I get a row by row breakdown of all those different BPS codes. against their eligible area. So this is kind of what you need to submit your BPS annually to the RPA. So all the land use codes, the total area for your claim, and that just breaks it all down. Not going to go into any more detail other than the fact that you can export that to Excel by hitting this button like so. If the row by row summary is not what you want, you actually want a slightly more higher level one. So for example, for Cowdray, having a row by row table, Nick, I imagine is a bit of a whopper. What you can do is you can produce a report by clicking this report button at the top and breaking down your projects just on the code that they've been assigned. So just let me show you between BPS and stewardship, for example. If I hit done, what that does is that creates a summary BPS report. So for my 288 hectare block, this is the breakdown of those BPS codes by the arable lands for diversification and non-agricultural, for example, and exactly the same structure for stewardship. So you can see that for our stewardship plan that we've just designed, you get that breakdown here, including, for example, that haymaking supplement that we put on top. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, you've mentioned land management plans, and I think this is where we as a tool are moving in the future. Could you just outline what you're trying to get out of, this scenario planning and how you think you're going to use it?
Well, so for scenario planning, for example, we obviously it's looking at future funding streams essentially, and building those ideas, fields that we might take out of production. What can we do with them? What might that look like? Especially with things like hedges and things like that, it's looking at how we link them, which ones we prioritize with linking to other types of habitat which we might create. So if we're putting fields over to, if we're taking out production, for example, how are we going to link those via the hedges? It's all that sort of just to be able to view it on a big overview is where we're at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So I'm just going to quickly demonstrate that workflow. So say, for example, arbitrary. This is the field parcel that. Actually, let's just look at some data layers because we haven't touched on those. Is there anything in the flood zone, for example, is normally quite a nice one to look at. So
probably not.
No, I think, there's a little, here you go. Okay, let's just say for argument's sake that this part of this arable field is flooding. So we've got a wet field corners going along here. What I would do as part of my management plan is first select the whole field parcel, right click and click copy to project. And what I want to do is I want to create a new project. I'm going to call this land management plan, or it could be scenario one, maybe scenario one, LMP. And I'm bringing that over to my land management plan template like so. And so now what I've got is I've just got that one polygon I'm focusing on. And then the next thing I can do is I can assign this polygon what I think it might become. So instead of assigning it what's currently on the background, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut off that flood zone. So I'm just going to follow that flood zone along the edge like so. And it actually, probably Nick, you've already made this field rectangle as part of your stewardship. So
probably, yeah.
Don't.
There's not much left after that, I'd say, in that one. But
I was going to say it's getting thinner and thinner. I'm sure we're run out of room. But anyway, just for the principle is that this might stay in production, so this might stay as a cereal crop. However, you've now got this section that you can do something different with, and that might be, for example, a shelter belt or doing a bit of woodland planting, or it might be, leaving it to be tussocky grassland and scrub over and natural regeneration. But all you want to do is use the land app as like kind of a kitchen table map. So that's scenario one, but it might be that you have a scenario 2, 3, and 4, which is a slightly different combination of that principle.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing over the probably next year. What UK Hub did was allow us to identify, and our natural capital report, to identify areas that we can work on and fields, and then we delve in deeper on the detail on individual fields. And we'll be building those scenarios and funding options on those as well.
And I think that's it. You want to, as an estate, even though you don't know exactly where you're going, you want to at least just have that project pipeline ready. Definitely. So if someone does knock on your door saying, look, I'm interested in this section of your estate, what have you got on offer? At least you've got a bit of a plan. You're like, okay, we're thinking about taking X many hectares out of production to do something, whatever that something is, to be defined. But what's the offer? Do you want woodland? Do you want carbon sequestration, or do you want flood mitigation? And we're doing a reed bed. And that process is just this part of this journey that, to be frank, no one knows what's going to happen. But what we're really trying to do is just give you the ability to at least prepare for that eventuality. Great. Just as a note, I can see there's loads of questions coming through. We'll get to them just towards the end. We've seen them. Tom's handling them at the moment, and there will be give us another 5-10 minutes and we'll come over to the Q&A if that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we've basically land management plan. I think that's going to be a future template that more people use, which is just a way of future scenario planning, again, that you can get that report from. And, in my head, countryside stewardship and the land management plan templates, they're very similar. They're about what are you doing next on your land. Apart from the countryside stewardship's got a tangible value associated with it that we can, derive from the reports. What I want to do is just kind of move on. We've touched on quite a bit of this around collaboration, but is it just you using the land app, or who?
No,
else?
I think it's really important. For us, obviously we spend a lot of time on it, and farm manager, forestry manager spend a lot of time on this side of the land app. But there's more than that. One of the big attractions was the collaborative way that everything can be viewed. It's cloud-based, so we can access it from anywhere. So our security team use it, just so they've got a really clear boundary. They know which boundaries. They know, for example, who's got horses in which field. We've got farm tenants broken down, so they know which, if there's sheep out, they know which farm tenants to call. Our works department have started using it to map all the utilities. They map all of our water meters across the estate, there are hundreds. They've been going around, and it's a classic estate. It's all in someone's head. Somebody knows where they all are. So this is the first opportunity now where we've got it down on this mapping system, and they've taken a photo of every single one. So it's recorded now, and we can all view that. We all know where they are. So if anyone goes, where's the stopcock for whatever building, we know where it is. Look on the land app, it's straight away there. So it's more than this sort of land management thing. So it's being used on a wider estate. Obviously, our residential manager uses it daily. We've got 400 odd properties, so she uses it for tenancy agreements and all sorts. So it's used by the whole wider estate.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great to hear, and I think that's a really important point. Although we've spoke a lot about land management, we're just really trying to promote geospatial data being integrated into an estate management plan. And especially if you've got staff that have been with you for 30 or 40 years, they just know exactly where the utilities are. It is just in their head. And what you want to do is de-risk that situation by just getting them to draw a line on a map and label it. And even if you're not getting ready for a submission with that, at least you can create a project. We've got a blank template that I imagine you use.
I'd say when you ask which project template do we use most, it's probably the blank one, because it's people building that data themselves. And putting in those options of taps and water pipe, etc. So we're under no illusions, this is going to take years, but every time a water pipe's found, shall we say, it's mapped on the estate. It's mapped, so it won't be found again by a digger or something. So it's just about building that communication as well, and coming under one Cowdray, as it were, which is one of our slogans. So it's there we are. Being more collaborative.
Nice slogan. So just to reiterate that point, we have got this blank template, which is kind of a catch-all term with some basic functions. So if I've drawn a line, I can draw water pipes, hedges, gas cables, fiber optics, etc. And if I draw a polygon, this is just going to be arbitrary, but then you've got access to slightly different features. So soil risk, manure management is one of those, infrastructure, etc. So that blank template, I think, is probably our most popular. I don't know actually if between that and BPS, but a bit of flexibility to kind of just doodle on a map. And just remember, once you've drawn it on the land app, that is a geospatial file that can be exported and analyzed or moved. So it's not just about putting it on the land app and it looking pretty there for a little while. It's actually part of the legacy of the estate that you can save and share as generations move forward. So,
and I know you've got some data layers of utilities, but they're quite high level, aren't they? They're sort of national grids. But we're just working now with a few of our more local utility suppliers to be able to upload some of their data to get that. So you've got the big power lines there running through, but on a smaller scale, we're just trying to get the more localized data.
Absolutely. So the more localized ones, I think, is quite good that you build relationships with them. Definitely we can get it into the software, but for us to try and deal with however many hundreds, if not thousands, of local authorities there are would be a big ask. But we've got main infrastructure, but if they can give you a geospatial file, whatever that file is, you can just drag and take it into the land app, which is
hopefully what we'll be doing fairly soon.
Perfect. Okay, so you've mentioned collaborations, water meters. Oh yeah, just a point, you touched on photos, but you can upload geospatial photos. So if you've got an album somewhere on some computer, whether it's even on your phone, you can just click the three dots next to a project, so you can upload them to the baseline, for example, and click upload photo. What I tend to do is create a new blank project called photos and just upload them all in there. But it might be that you want a project called, I don't know, water meter photos, another one called stewardship evidence photos, and how you do that is up to you, but you can have a bit of flexibility on that. Just as a note on that, oh, sorry, Nick.
So you're about to say the same thing, probably. Yeah, which is to make sure you've got your location on your phone when you take a photo. Yeah.
Correct. So if you're using a disposable camera, unfortunately that won't upload, but if you've got a mobile phone, just ensure your GPS is turned on your photo settings. So when you do take the photo, it drops a little pin, a lat long coordinate that the Land app can detect as you upload.
Yeah, and on iPhone, I can't exactly remember, but you have to turn on something different, don't you, to make it work? But I know exactly what it is.
I think there's a
standard way that iPhones take photos can't be uploaded. So just worth noting.
And I think, Tim, if you're on the call and you can pop in the chat exactly what iPhone users need to do, or give us a link to some guidance, that'd be useful. Okay, perfect. So one thing I wanted to demo just towards the end is kind of, you've done all this mapping, kind of the so what, the next steps and the outputs. And actually, Nick, this is something I don't think Cowdray's fully grasped yet, so this might be a bit new for you, which is exciting, which is our map of maps, but also the dashboard, which I know you guys are using at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly over to another map just for the last bit of demonstration, and just demonstrate how some of our new functionality can really help tenancy management and management of an estate who's kind of made up of different components, different units. So fundamentally, what we're really promoting is a devolved data model, where you devolve your data, whether that's the Ordnance Survey or your stewardships, your BPS, to management units. So on the screen at the moment, you can see a single tenant of an estate up in Cheshire, and they've got their baseline, and they've done a bit of a management plan, and they've got their basic payment just for their individual SBI number. And what we've introduced is at an administrative level, so not at the tenancy level, but at the admin level, you can actually publish different projects to your data layers. So we touched on data layers just a minute ago, but we've introduced this button called publish to your organization. And if you tick that on, like I have done for this one, which is green, and for this one, it's black. So if it's green, at midnight, Land app goes and creates a bespoke data layer for you as an organization that combines all of the projects of the same project type. So all the stewardships into one data layer, all the baseline habitats into one, and all the land management plans into one. And that is then available as a data layer in the right-hand side. So if I now go into my organization, I've got 84 projects, so that could be tenants or facilitation funds or neighbours that I'm working with, and I can actually toggle on their baseline habitat assessment as a data layer on my map. So this is actually 15 tenants baseline maps, all displayed in a single source of truth, if you will. So that's the baseline habitat, and just to show you, we're working with this is part of an ELMS trial we're doing with DEFRA, which is quite exciting, around buffering watercourses and extending the width of hedgerows. But you can see that they're using the Land app to administer at that higher level their plans. So that map of maps function, just to make you aware of, works for Ordnance Survey MasterMap. It works for your basic payment. So you can actually give the tenants their own map that they own and they run. You'll just publish it to your higher level administrative level. So they can do their BPS, their stewardship, but when they put their hedge on their plan, Nick, that could then compile into yours as well. So that's just to touch on that point. And the final thing before we come on to questions is that same principle can also be linked into a dashboard as well. So one source of truth, multiple tenants or multiple working parties, you mentioned forestry there, Nick, is that data can be aggregated to a dashboard. So as soon as one of your team edits a polygon, the live dashboard will update with how that area is changing. So this is just a summary of the Chumley estate for this ELMS trial. This is their baseline. So it's 2,000 hectares, 15 different tenants, including, or 15 different holdings, one the main estate, some the tenants, and then this is how their management plans are coming on. So it's that high level admin that can be derived from just drawing a polygon or a line on a map. So that's main output. I suppose, Nick, while I'm on dashboard, I know you yourself and a couple of colleagues have been using a dashboard. Do you want to explain a bit more about how you found the dashboards and any comments?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really good way of, as you can see on screen, just breaking it down and be able to view what percentage of your land holding is given over to nature, I guess. And again, it's that when you click through from baseline to your land management plan, you can see those really quickly, visualize it. And it's for us, it was a really good way to communicate to other people when we presented to other people our plans. It's just a good way of communicating what our plans are and what the actual impact will be on the ground. So yeah. It was really useful, which we'll still be using, well, forever, to be honest.
Yeah, and just to kind of give you a flavour of the dashboards that we can produce, this is just looking at the UK HAB layers, which is the baseline land management plan, but we've got dashboards for basic payment, which can calculate, for example, your phase out, how much basic payments dropping in terms of the value, countryside stewardship scenarios, so you can start to compare 2 different stewardship plans or just like the total value of a stewardship over its years. So just get in touch if any of those dashboards would be useful to you. And as we mentioned at the start, we're really keen to have an hour-long support session with any of your estates that are, interested in learning more. Before we kind of go to Q&A, then, it's kind of a last point then, Nick, from me is what's your plan moving forward? What do you see as the next steps for Cowdray in terms of not only mapping, but just generally in terms of management?
Well, in terms of mapping, in terms of the land app, I think I touched on it at the beginning. We went over to the land app about 2 years ago. We spent a bit of time building that data, and then we rolled it out to the wider estate in sort of one big go. Some people have taken to it really, really well. Some people use it daily. I mean, there's probably 10, 15 users across the estate use it daily. We've got about 40 signed up. So really, it's just about revisiting that, making sure they're all getting the absolute maximum out of it, because a lot probably just don't realise it's a new piece of software. So it's about revisiting that, and then generally across the estate we've got so many good exciting projects coming up, and the land app will feature in pretty much every single one. So for example, the river, we've got about 10 kilometres of river that runs right through the middle. We've got lots of nice plans with that, and then when we get those UK HAB, we'll have much more detailed baseline habitat surveys. Somebody who's much more qualified than I am will get involved in that. And again, that'll be uploaded to the land app, just building that data. And essentially that's what it's about. It's about building that data for us and making sure everyone can view it and working more collaboratively across the estate. It's pretty much a broad brush plan for our future. We haven't demonstrated the Teams function, but yeah, that's been amazing.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe just at a high level point on the Teams function, I mean, I can show you what it looks like, is that your maps dashboard can be divided in however you want. So I just showed you that tenancy units where you can have each of the tenants have their own map. But in the team management, Nick, I had a quick glance at yours yesterday. You can really apply quite a lot of filters to your data, and therefore at an administrative level, you can see everything. But it might be certain teams, say your security team, that only need to see certain elements, or your, the team that are helping with your water quality, or your advisors coming into the UK HAB survey. You can apply filters to your maps and therefore restrict access to certain users. So it's that privacy while they're still involved in collecting data on that same one source of truth.
Yeah, I mean, the way we did it was we have what I call a viewer tag. Everyone gets a viewer tag. Everyone can that's on our master map, so everyone can view that. And then we have our teams, so farms, forestry, works, parks and gardens, each have their tag. And then we just go down. Every single person has their own individual tag as well. Then just so we really know who's viewing what. But that's just really good, really useful function.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nick. I can see there's quite a few questions. I just wanted to quickly just go through the agenda and then what we've just covered, and then opening the floor to the Q&A. So importing your data is mainly around that land registry data and the SBI number you have. Once you've created that ownership boundary, there's a lot of information the land that can serve to you, whether that's Ordnance Survey MasterMap or other data sets. Then we talk through creating your projects, so how you begin mapping, using the different templates we have, which although it can feel a bit restrictive at times, what it does mean is the data you're collecting is completely clean. So those reports we're generating, whether it's that dashboard or that summary, is able to be done. If you've misspelt the word barley somewhere, the reports will just get quite messy quite quickly. So using the projects, Nick, you've spoke really nicely about the collaborate function. So glad to hear it's working so well. We are cloud-based, which means someone in Tokyo can collaborate with you at the same time. There's no delay on that collaboration. So across the estate, you're working off the same one source of truth. It doesn't require you to download the data onto your laptop to then access it. It's all sat on a cloud server, which means it's all accessible all the time to your team in a fully encrypted way. And then, there's that final point around leveraging that data. You want to equip your estate with future direction, just good understanding of where you currently are, because only when you understand that can you actually move to the next level. So yeah, Nick, thank you so much. We are an open door. We've got the chat function in app if there's any direct questions that, any roadblocks you're hitting. But yeah, when you do leave this webinar, if you do want a one-to-one session with either myself or with Tom or with Similar, just leave us your email address and we'll get in touch over the next couple of weeks. In terms of next steps, we've got regular webinars coming on. So I think BPS is next week. I think stewardship the week after. I think, don't hold me to that. Do just check our website and we will hopefully, see you all soon. But thank you so much for joining, and we'll be in touch.